Get 'em.
It's a Brave Talk Radio exclusive here on ToniEmehel.com. We're going both deeper and wider as we discuss the intricacies of relationships. So let's join the conversation. It's already in progress with author Colin Tate, Latonja Worsham, and yours truly, Toni Emehel. Is this your man?
Okay, so we've been talking about, is this your man? And today we are blessed to have with us author Colin Tate to take us in a deeper and wider discussion about 6 types of men that women should avoid if they desire to have a long-lasting, sustainable relationship that will lead to marriage. Colin, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again, ladies. I appreciate it.
Oh, this has been so much fun. We've got Take It to the Max extraordinaire herself, Latonja Worsham, with us.
Well, thank you for having me. Colin, we are excited about you joining us again.
Well, thank you, ladies.
And then we have some young blood, Tressica Wallace. Bringing us a fresh perspective. Welcome, Tress.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about these men. I thought about some of the discussions that we've had in the past, and eventually we have to get to a discussion about, why these men are this way. And we need to talk about, Colin, I'm dating the BSer. How do I get my man to act right? But before we get there, I think there are several of these types that we need to finish discussing before we can even get there. So
I think you're right. Let's talk about, one I think that we haven't discussed, the CEO.
Oh,
Colin,
yes.
Can you help us with him? We definitely need to talk about him.
Absolutely, ladies. So the gentleman in my book is called the CEO, a.k.a. the boss. He represents the man that is emotionally, financially, verbally, and physically abusive. He represents the man that wants to control all aspects of your life. He wants to know where you're going, what you're wearing, who you're going with, what you're doing. And the way he works, ladies, is in the beginning he presents himself as Prince Charming. Because of his deep insecurity, he likes to lead with what he can do for you. Sometimes he leads with his money, or sometimes he leads with what he can provide for you. And his goal is to be one way in front of your friends and family, but to drag you from your support system, isolate you. And once you're isolated, that is when the real person starts to come out. He usually targets women who have low self-esteem. He also targets women who usually have a tempestuous relationship with most likely their father. So those are some of the common traits that he connects with. If you are a strong, independent woman, you have his gift of persuasion or what he can do for you doesn't have effect. I always have a saying, when you date a man for what he can do for you, you sometimes end up paying for it. So that is who the CEO is.
That's amazing. Let me ask you something. Could he possibly be involved in domestic violence, perhaps?
Oh, absolutely. Their abuse can come in all different shapes and forms. Some men, it starts off physically. Some men it's verbally and emotionally. Some men is digitally, where they do it through social media, and other men, they do it financially. It's all an aspect of control. And I always tell ladies and the gentleman in my book, Dr. Bruce Jones, I thank God that he actually came forward, because he was the most difficult man to get to come forward. You can imagine someone who's going to speak about his abuse, why he does it, how he does it. But, yeah, the abuse can come in so many different ways. Physical is usually the last form, but abuse comes in a lot of different ways.
That's interesting, because a lot of women like men to be in control. They don't like I call them, noodlebacks. So that's amazing that you would mention that.
Yeah.
CEO.
Well, I think one of the differences with the CEO, because I am one of those women, if you can't stand your ground as a man, you certainly can't be my man. I'm going to need you to be able to knuckle up, because I'm going to need you to be able to stand your ground, because if I can topple you over, be it verbally or however, if you can't stand your ground with me, then I can't expect you to be out there and be that protector of me that I need you to be. So I think the difference there is that this CEO seems to be the type of person, like you said before, he's insecure, but the type of woman that's drawn to him, it almost sounds like the sugar daddy type.
Well, you can have some sugar daddies who can be controlling. Here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with a man being a man's man. You know, I consider myself a man's man. But there is a distinct difference when a CEO is extremely jealous over any friendships you have, whether it's with a male or a female. The CEO will try to hinder you advancing in your life because he's afraid that if you realize the true potential you have, you will leave him. So there's so many interviews I have with men who do domestic violence. They always said the ironic thing was they said that the women they abused had greatness already in them, but they couldn't see it in themselves. And their fear was the minute they started to get a little confidence, or, you know, like in my book, the young lady was in med school, and he would encourage her, yes, go to school. But when she went through with it, then he would hide her keys. He would hide her scrubs. He would bleach her scrubs. He would hide her books. So I don't want women to get it mistaken from a man who's just, you know, a man who wants to be strong and independent. A CEO is a totally different animal.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something. I like what we're discussing, though, because this helps us open the book that it's not just about domestic violence either, that we're dealing with the verbal and not to mention the mental dismantling that's taking place here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the harm in dating this CEO type is that it is the type of individual that will hold you back from achieving your fullest potential. And unless you achieve, as a male or as a female, unless you achieve your fullest potential, you never truly live a life of happiness, joy, or fulfillment. And that's the hard part of dating one of these CEOs. But again, I asked the question, but I love them. What do I do?
Well, that's a great question. The thing that from the men who explained to me why they do the abuse and why the women gravitate towards it, first of all, there's always a sign. And a lot of times women would pass it off as just an isolated incident. But one guy told me, he said, verbal abuse is just physical abuse's ugly cousin. It is coming. But he said, trust and believe. If the guy is emotionally cursing you out, verbally abusing you, getting jealous, the physical side will come. So the thing when you ask the women, why do they stay into it, they also have to look at themselves. A lot of women who I found who are attracted to these CEOs also dealt with some abuse in their past. They also saw abuse growing up as well, and there's just such a lack of self-worth or self-confidence that these men, one guy told me, he said it's like a neon sign on their forehead. He asked a few questions, and he can tell that she would be keen to some of his manipulation. Once he finds out the father is not in the life, or once he finds out the father is there but absent, some men are in their lives and they live in the same house but they're absent, he says, I know my charm will work. I know I can lead with my money. I know I can lead with what I do for them, and I can isolate them from the situation. And he says every woman he abused, the common denominator was abandonment issues with the father. There were some issues with the father.
Yeah, let me make sure I heard that. So you're saying that the CEO type, the women that typically will fall prey to their spell, if you will, are women who have daddy issues, that daddy either was present but absent, or just absent altogether?
Yeah, absent altogether. Now, there's some women who have issues with their mother as well, but the common denominator with most of them was that there was an absence or there was a void in their life from the father, and they look for these men to fill that void. These men can sense this insecurity. They can sense that vulnerability. I mean, the guy who I interviewed, he told me, he said there's some nurses he would approach, lead with what he could do for them because he was insecure himself. He didn't think he was good enough just on face value, so he would offer his money, his prestige. And he said the women who didn't fall prey to that, he knew that he couldn't go any further. He said, I already know that my manipulation would not work, my anger issues would not work, my control would not work. But if he would meet certain women or certain nurses who he could lead with his money, because the thing when you date a CEO, he moves very fast. A CEO has no problem in 3-4 weeks talking about, hey, I see you as the one. He that's his goal, is to move as quickly as possible to get you hooked, to manipulate you. And again, when you're isolated from your support system, he doesn't want you to keep a job. He doesn't, and the way he presents it is as, I got you. But the real thing is about control, because once you realize that it's too late, you have control, and then there's a codependency because you need him now, and he knows that.
Codependency. That's amazing. You know, this reminds me so much of the movie Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts.
Yep.
And that guy was actually, that's Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts. And that guy was definitely the boss. But it also helps me think about the dads that are in the home that I watch, my own dad, my own personal testimony real quick, and that is, you know, my dad was the boss, and he was present. He was never absent, but he was very controlling and verbally abusive. And it was interesting because he had the ability to control my mother's coming and going. And, yes, she was very codependent upon him. And today, now that, you know, in her death, she's gone, but I see him trying to date again, even at the age of 75. And he still has that kind of ability to do those type of things to control women today.
Yep. And if I were to sit down with your father, I guarantee it's a deeper issue of something he experienced when he was growing up, or he experienced when he was younger. Because when, you know, there's an old saying, you've all heard this, that hurt people hurt people.
That's
but
right.
Until a person, whether it's your father who's in his 80s or a young man that's 20 years old, until they deal with those issues, it will be the same problem, just a different woman every single time.
I guess what I would say with the CEO is, you know, you've got these girls nowadays that, you know, they want somebody that has a lot of money that's basically going to take care of them. And, you know, there's, you know, a guy right now that, you know, has propositioned me, you know, oh, well, I can do this, I can do that for you. I say, well, I need you to understand I'm not interested in what you can do for me, because everything that you're just saying I can do for myself. So a lot of times, if a female doesn't stand up for herself, you know, letting somebody know, like, hey, you know, I don't need that. You know, they just see, oh, well, girl, he has this, he has that, he has this, he has that. You know, they end up the ones becoming victims to an abusive relationship. And I've seen it happen with friends. Hopefully, you know, they got out of this situation before it got bad, but they could have ended up dead or anything just because, oh, well, he has money, he has real estate, he has this, he has that. You know, so if I'm going to live in the doghouse, it may as well look like this.
So how do some of the younger women that you have in your circle or that you've heard of, how does this CEO surface in their lives? I mean, are they resistant to him, or do they fall for his game?
I mean, they fall for it because usually they're out there looking for someone to take care of them. If it's going to certain places where they know certain guys that, you know, have money or whatever are going to be, then they go to these locations in hopes of picking one up. And, you know, whatever consequences comes along with that, they're down for, because all they see is the money, the glitz and the glam.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. But what happens is, after a while, when a woman has been, the sad thing is, I've seen when women have dated a CEO time and time again, the level of self-worth and self-confidence, it just, I hate to be frank, but what the doctor told me who I interviewed was, he said, my goal is, as long as she thinks she is a worthless piece of you-know-what in the mirror, the better off. Because the minute she sees that she is a light, a queen, that she is of worth, he says that's when we have a problem. So all these women who are looking for men for money, there's a part of them that doesn't feel they could obtain it themselves. Because if they could obtain the lifestyle that they want on their own, these women wouldn't go after these guys. And that's why the women who are very successful, are very independent, aren't attracted to a CEO, and nor is a CEO attracted to her, because what he can provide, they can provide for themselves, and his power doesn't work on them. So he always goes after women who, like the young lady said, who are enamored with a lifestyle, but also are not confident they can get that lifestyle in themselves. And it doesn't mean that they're younger, because he's met younger women who then fall for him because they were still confident. I can get this lifestyle without going through all of this.
Yeah, in paralleling the two, it sounds like the CEO is really the exact opposite of the baby boy.
Here's one thing that's interesting. I want to cut you off, not to cut you off, but one thing that is interesting about this book is some of the men will form to be one or two. I've met men that were baby boys that inevitably became CEOs. I've met men that were online players that turned into baby boys. I've met men that was a woman's total package that ended up being her BSer as well. And when you have a baby boy that acts that way, it's usually because, again, he's deep down he's unhappy with his situation, and sometimes he self-medicates with alcohol or drugs. And sometimes a baby boy can turn into be a CEO because, you think about it, he's dating a woman who is of prestige. And you remember, a man's confidence and self-esteem is tied into what he does, what kind of money he makes. And if he's feeling threatened by that, then you can start to see an abuse come out. It may not be physical, but it can be verbal, it can be emotional. So, yeah, I've seen a baby boy turn into a CEO at some point.
Yeah, and what I was going to add to that is that I don't want to call it their victim, but their target woman has the same characteristics.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely same characteristics, especially the area of low self-esteem, and I know of some cases for sure concerning that, leave no doubt. And then I think about, when it talked about him being extremely jealous, too.
Mm-hmm.
Him being extremely jealous can lead to so many other things. When you mentioned him stealing her keys or hiding her keys, I mean, some women really, it's amazing the women out there that settle. They settle in their mind saying, well, it's not so bad. It's not like he's beating me. He just really loves me, so he just wants me to always be around. Like kind of similar to the BSer where he's discussing, these ongoing excuses. But it's amazing the things that women will tolerate.
Yes. There's a saying in my book called The Benefit of the Doubt Theory. And that's where women will say, well, maybe that's what happened, or it could be the situation, or that could be what he's saying. And I've even seen other friends of females give the guy the benefit of the doubt. And I always tell women the benefit of the doubt is what keeps us in business. It's that well, maybe he's right, or maybe that is what happened, or maybe his phone was on vibrate, or maybe he did lose his phone. Just don't tolerate it, because if men would not tolerate 10% of what we put y'all through. I will say it every time we're on this call. We will not tolerate 10% of the stuff we put y'all through. We wouldn't tolerate it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that's why a lot of women find themselves when they're in a situation saying to him, well, I'm going to treat you like you treated me. And then as soon as she goes and does something, like he did toward her, he makes a big deal out of it. And then she's like, well, you do this to me all the time, and I don't act like this. But the first time I do it to you, you act like this. So I guess that plays into that tolerance.
Yeah, because see, here's the thing. It's like a job, and I'll give you ladies an analogy. Let's say you all had a great job where you came early, you stayed late, you would cancel vacations for this job, but then all of a sudden this job started not appreciating. This job started asking you to work late, asking you to work weekends, canceling your vacations, looking over you for promotions, not paying you on time. Now you may tolerate it once, maybe twice, but after a conversation, they're not complying or they're not changing. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to move on because you know you can find another job that can treat you the way you need to be treated. Men do the same thing with relationships. Now, on the same analogy, the only way you're going to stay in that disrespectful job is because you know there's something on your background, and you won't get another job in that same type of financial bracket because your background's going to pop. So you got to stay in that situation. So if women could take that same analogy and understand, you can do better. This man is not the alpha or omega of men. You can find another man, and that's what we men feel. We can find another woman. We're just not going to tolerate it.
Well, that's right. You know, and I think about a lot of this because, you know, I think that's the fear that a lot of women have, is that they're thinking, well, will there be another man in my life after this one? So I'll just go ahead and put up with this stuff, because men will find women quicker than women being able to find men. So, or at least that's the thought process. So, Colin, I ask you, I mean, you know, is that the mindset really that the men have? Well, I can find another woman, so I can play this game as long as I want to.
Well, the thing is this: if a man, every man, ladies, at some point, I'm generalizing here. I'm sure there are some men that may not fall into this, but every man at some point is trying to sleep with as many women as he can. I don't care who he is. At some point in his life, even men who are ministers now, even men who are faithful husbands like myself, at some point we are trying to sleep with as many women as we can. But trust and believe, when we are emotionally attached to a woman and she is not treating us well, we're out. We're out, because we're just not going to tolerate it, because we are confident there is somebody else out there that will treat me better. And I want women to understand the same applies. Again, you wouldn't tolerate a job that treated you badly because you're confident I can find another job. It's the same way with relationships.
All right, well, let me interject this, because you just said something very key, in that men will, at some point in their life, they have tried to sleep with as many women as they could. And, Latonja, you could probably weigh in on this. We had discussed about the acts that were committed on us as a black people back during slavery time, when men were expected to sleep with as many women as possible in order to produce more slaves, so that they could, in fact, populate master's farm or master's plantation with willing and working hands. They became methods of breeding more slaves, so slave owners didn't have to purchase new slaves. They could just breed them right there. So it was the job of the black male to go and impregnate as many slave women as they could in order to keep the farm populated. And in some degree, and I know your book doesn't cover this, but that mental process that was worked on us then, and even when you read the Willie Lynch speech and how the breaking of a slave, this is really slave mentality and slave behavior that we see in the lives of these men when they try to sleep with as many women as possible. I mean, in 2016, and you run across a young man who's in his early 20s, early to mid-20s, and he's fathered 7 to 8 children, that's slave mentality, and that's slave behavior.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. If I could say something too in connection to that, yeah, because this speaks to what we've talked about on another broadcast about mind control, which leads to behavior modification. So, yeah, this method of breeding slaves, this is all about generational curses, too, in a nutshell, because, I mean, these men are out there having all these different children from various different women trying to conquer, but yet it's creating a negative world that we live in today, to have that type of mindset and to feel free to abuse not only other women, the children, as well as their own selves. So, you know, I guess one of the things that come to mind is, you know, there has to be, women are looking for a resolve. I don't want to sound like I'm angry as a woman. I've been married 24 years. But I must say, you know, this vicious cycle that they're having to endure, there has to be a breaking somewhere along the lines in the world that we live in today, particularly as Christians. Because, see, I know this even happens, or this is even going on even in the church world. So this is not something that we're just making up out of the blue, radio listeners. We want you to know this is real, even in the world and the bubble in which many of you live in. Go ahead, Colin.
So, okay, let me address the first. Well, no, let me address the second thing about the many children. So, my wife's friend's boyfriend has 10 kids, and she and her were just telling me the reason he has 10 kids because he likes a lot of sex. And I told her, I said, no, every man likes sex. I said, if not to be promiscuous or to put myself out there, but if he and I were to sit down and talk, I'm sure our numbers of how many women we slept with will probably be neck and neck. The difference between him and I am responsible. That's the difference between a lot of men and a lot who have a lot of kids versus men who don't have a lot of kids. It's not that the man who has a lot of kids is sleeping with any more women. He's just more irresponsible. Now,
You
when
are
it comes
listening
to the
to
whole
Brave
thing of
Talk
breeding
Radio
with the,
at Toni
with the issues of slavery,
Emehel.com.
again, I can't necessarily dispute that there still are some residual effects. I don't know how many years ago slavery was, but there still is some residual effects. I can say that. But the reason there are only 2 black men in my book is because all men, white, black, Indian, Hispanic, they all go through this phase in life where they are just trying to sex as many as they can, because it is a brand of accomplishment amongst men, not black men, not white men. It's just men, period. Now, maybe other races have a better time of covering it up. Maybe other races are more responsible because they're not impregnating all these children. So I can't give you some of the slavery mentality with that, where men are just not being responsible and just having unprotected sex with so many random women. But that's why I when I did this research for this book, ladies, and after I interviewed so many people in America, that's when I went to social media and started interviewing all these different women from all the parts of the country, part of the world. And that's when the light bulb went off that no matter if they lived in Atlanta, South Africa, London, or Los Angeles, they were still running into these 6 men. So it just, because at first this was just going to be a black man book when I first started it, and it just evolved when I interviewed it. I noticed it doesn't matter what the race or what country they're from. At the end of the day, men are still men.
And Colin, I can definitely agree with you there. And the reason why we talk about black men and we narrow it down to black men is because those are the sets of men that are a part of our lives. And that's really the target audience for any of our discussions. But one of the things that I do want to qualify is that this is a learned behavior for our culture as it is for some of the other cultures. Because if you trace history back, it comes from actually the Greco-Roman culture. And we as a society over time have adapted that culture, and that's why we have this behavior that we do now. So, yes, it is prevalent in all races, but we speak particularly to how and why it's prevalent and when we as a black people picked it up, and it was literally thrust upon us during the era of making a slave, when we were enslaved and we were forced to take on these characteristics and behaviors. So with that said, before we go to the break, I want to talk about one other thing that we were discussing when Latonja, I think it was you that talked about men dismissing women so easily, and I know I'm paraphrasing what you said, because it's easy for them to find another woman. But women, it may not be as easy to find another man. Now, from the Christian perspective, anyone who considers themselves a Christian, a follower of Christ, as women, we've always heard that statement thrown, that scripture thrown in our face, from the pulpit, he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. And therefore, the seed is planted in your mind that as a woman, you should not be out there looking for a man.
That's right.
And I believe that the interpretation many times of that particular passage and how it has been thrust into the lives of Christian women has been that you must sit and wait.
Well, that's what it looks like, or that's what they've been saying. And it says they would obtain favor of the Lord. But it doesn't mean that you won't obtain favor at all, because you need to be somewhere to be found, first of all. So you got to be found. But not only that, I don't think God wanted us to just sit there and wait. So you're absolutely right, Toni. I don't believe just because we're Christians don't mean we have to sit there and wait, because when you think about Ruth and Naomi, I mean, come on now.
Exactly, that's exactly
Naomi told Ruth to go to the field and begin to glean and to graze right there amongst the men so she could be in position where the men were.
And on top of that, did she not send Ruth to his room?
Okay, yes, she did.
Okay,
and we need to stop acting like that's not going on in the world we live in today of Christendom, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree.
Listen, now, it didn't say that he went into her while she was in the room, But
No.
the main point is that she was encouraged to pursue that which she desired. Oftentimes, again, from that Christian perspective, this scripture, he that findeth a wife, has literally crippled us, has paralyzed us, and has frozen us in a state of, I must wait for my Boaz to find me.
Please.
And I don't believe that that's how God intended these scriptures to be interpreted.
Here's my theory. Here's a theory. I spoke at a church, I think it was last Thursday, to a group of women. And it's so ironic that women, I guess Christian women, when they start to become celibate or become born-again virgins, I told them this. I told them, first of all, I said, God always sends us teachers and lessons to correct our situation, to help us grow, to help us move forward. If you're not happy, if you have not found love, if you are still frustrated, and if God is perfect, it's obvious you're doing something wrong. Not God, not somebody else. It's obvious you're doing something wrong. And some of the women who told me I asked them, when you stopped having sex and you came to God, did you come to God for God, or did you come to God for a goal? And if you came to God for a goal to find a husband, God is saying, yes, I want you to come to me and find your husband, but the work that you must do is still there. One lady told me, she said, I thought once I stopped having sex that, boom, it will start to happen. And I said, you kind of made sex. Let's look at that example like an alphabet. You thought that sex was in the alphabet of learning what you need to do to get your husband. You thought sex was X in the alphabet. I said, no, I think sex is just C and D. There's still other things you got to learn that you need to be doing, because there are a lot of celibate women out here that are still single without a husband, and there are a lot of women out there that have sex before marriage that have a husband. So, again, I'm not disputing that one way is better than the other, but it doesn't absolve you from the work. There's still work you have to do. And I found that a lot of women in the Christian faith, they get away from working on themselves, because I am a believer the reason we are all single, we are the common denominator. I tell my friends that, ladies, I was one of those guys. My wife was one of those women at one point. I have female friends like that. They want to blame the other person. We are the common denominator, and I'm thank God taught me my lessons I needed to learn, because I would have missed my wife, without a doubt.
Right, and we forget there are other scriptures in the Bible, by the way, like faith without works is dead. So if you believe in God by faith for a man, surely you need to put in the work.
That's right. That's right. All right, I want to read this one passage. And this will start the mind rolling as to where we're going to go in the discussion next. And, Colin, you say in your book, selling the dream is when a chameleon figures out exactly what you require out of a relationship and then presents or sells the illusion or the dream that in fact has come true. So
yes,
the chameleon presents himself as a dream come true. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's a Brave Talk Radio exclusive here on ToniEmehel.com.
Today's broadcast has been brought to you by Next Level Plus Project Management and Business Consultants. Learn more about how Next Level Plus can help you solve the right problems and seize the right opportunities by calling 704-780-2997 or visit their website at nextlevelplus.org.
Hi, this is Toni Emehel. You know, in the book of Ephesians, the Apostle Paul exhorted Ephesian believers to see prayer as a weapon to use in fighting spiritual battles. Are you fighting any spiritual battles today? Satan wants you to feel that you're all alone and that nobody cares about you or your situation. But he could be no further away from the truth. We are here for you. Join us for prayer during a weekly prayer call each Sunday at 8:30 p.m. This prayer call has two specific objectives. Our first objective is to bind the hand of the enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy you. Our second objective is to pray for God's covering and His protection over you as you go about the duties of your week. So join us each week, each Sunday at 8:30 p.m. by dialing 518-530-1840. That number again is 518-530-1840. You will be asked to enter an access ID, and the access ID is 211-341-648. You are listening to Brave Talk Radio at ToniEmehel.com.
All right, and we're back, and I want to thank you, radio listeners, for tuning in as we are discussing with author Colin Tate so many different areas of these different types of men. We've been talking about the CEO. He's an interesting individual as well, but now we're talking about the chameleon. Colin, help us out. He's talking about selling us the illusion. Tell us a little bit about what the chameleon is.
Well, the chameleon is, my opinion, the most dangerous man in the book because the chameleon can adapt who he needs to be depending on who he's dating. If you're a woman that has a strong Christian faith, guess what? So does he. If you don't like to drink, he doesn't either. If you love the movies, he loves the movies too. He is a gatherer of information. Usually a chameleon has a lot of females around him, not necessarily women he is sleeping with. He may have grown up with a lot of sisters, a lot of close female friends. So he is very keen on knowing what to say, when to say it, how to do those things to trigger an emotional response. He knows that women like to talk. So he is big on making sure he gets as much information as possible so he'll know exactly how to present himself to that particular woman. So when that passage you said about selling the dream, what he realizes is, if let's say you want more kids, if he doesn't, he makes sure he gets the question asked to figure out what exactly you want to hear. So if you want more kids, he's going to make it seem like he wants more kids too. If you want to live in a certain neighborhood, but he doesn't plan on moving, he's going to say, you know what, I have no problem moving either. That is selling the dream to you, presenting to be the quote-unquote perfect man or total package to you, but he doesn't mind doing it because he knows as a chameleon he's not going to be in it for the long haul at all. He will be in it very quickly, have sex with you, and then a lot of chameleons do what we like to call witness protection. They disappear. You can't call them. You can email them. You can text them. You can even do what we like to call the text message or the call voicemail. Just let me know you're okay. He will not fall for it. So that is how the chameleon operates.
The most dangerous, huh?
That is the most dangerous.
I actually had somebody very close to me that just got duped by a chameleon type. And, it's crazy because, like I said, you can see it, depending on the type of person you are, you can see it for somebody else, but you might not be able to see it for yourself. And, it was like that, literally the devil with the green eyes type thing that crept in, and now she is expecting, and he is nowhere to be found. If she speaks to him regarding it, oh, you were pregnant? I didn't know you were pregnant, or everything's a joke, everything's funny. Like, so, what now for the person that is in that situation dealing with that type of guy?
So that's a horrible situation to be in. One of the things, and the question I always get from women that ask me about a chameleon who seems like the perfect guy, how do you defend against that? And I tell them, time. Time is your biggest defense, because as hard as a man comes at you will be as fast as he dips out. So if he is coming as if he's trying to stuff 3 months worth of dates in a month, red flag. If you can have a meaningful conversation with a guy, but don't spill your whole life story, and that's what he wants. He wants all the juice. And I will admit, when I was in a single life, I was a chameleon. I was that guy. I had a lot of sisters. I had 3 older sisters who taught me a lot about women, what women want, what they don't want. I had a lot of female friends in my circle, and I knew what women wanted to hear. And again, there were some women I had no intentions of having a long-term relationship with, but I knew how to adjust my personality, adjust my views to fit what they needed. And that's why I say a chameleon is so deadly. But if you present that, you know what, I don't care how great you sound, I'm still not having sex with you in the first 3 or 4 weeks. Trust me, a chameleon will move on. He will move on because he's not in it for the long haul. He's not. He's in it for a short-term gain. So that young lady who you said got pregnant and now she's, stuck like Chuck, as we say sometimes, then I'm pretty sure they had sex in a fairly early amount of time. I'm not saying within the first day or so, but definitely under a month they were having sex.
One of the things that you said is that the chameleon is a gatherer of information. And since we live in such a socially aware society now where everything is posted on social media, I find out a lot about what's going on in people's lives. I find out more of what's going on in folks' lives on social media than I do when I'm sitting around in a conversation with them. And I mean, really, is that a watering hole for the chameleon?
Well, that is a start, but he has to get to the emotional aspect of what you're looking for in a partner. And he made a statement, the guy who I interviewed as chameleon, he made such a profound statement one time where he dated a woman who was very, very promiscuous. She was in a strip club. She was, she used to have sex for money back in the day. And I told her, I said, why are you even perceiving that there could be a future? He said, because even a prostitute doesn't want to feel like a prostitute. And I thought that was so profound that he said that, because at the end of the day, no woman wakes up and says, I don't want to fall in love. I don't want to meet the man of my dreams. When you were 18, 17, 16, you did not say, I don't ever want to get married. I don't ever want to fall in love. Now, when I meet women who say they don't want that, it's because life has taught them that they don't believe it's going to happen. That's why they say it. But back to what you said about that chameleon, on social media, you're only getting a few things. He has to get the emotional things of what you're looking for. He wants you looking at his page when you leave the conversation. He wants you talking to your girlfriends about him after a good phone conversation. That's what he wants, and he knows how to do it. He knows that, that was a good conversation. She's going to be talking to me about her friends after we get off this phone call. She's going to take our first date and make it the Super Bowl. That's what I tell women. Don't go to Super Bowl on the first date. A first date is just that, just to see if there should be a second one. A second date should be if there should be a third one. Don't make it Super Bowl and think you're walking this guy down the aisle. But guess what? The chameleon doesn't mind it. He doesn't mind you thinking you're going to walk him down the aisle because he knows he's going to be on witness protection in the next month or two. So he has no issue with it. So the thing is that time. And if he seems like everything is matching up, let the time see if his words matches his action. That's always the best defense is time.
Yeah, that's interesting because on the flip side of that, I've dated a chameleon back in the day. And, when we talk about the fact that he is a gatherer of information and he likes what I like and he does what I do, women have to also be careful. And I know I throw a lot of the cautions to the wind out there, but making sure, too, that he's not a pedophile. He's not a murderer. I mean, my sister lived with somebody for years that was just a roommate, and all of a sudden the police knocked on the door and said he was arrested for murder for killing his girlfriend years ago, not to mention a possible rapist. So we're talking about somebody who was very influential, very charismatic. The chameleon, he liked what I liked. He cared about what I cared about. And, yeah, you better believe it. I was telling my girlfriend he was all that in a bag of chips at one time.
One of the statements the chameleon says he loves to hear after 2 or 3 phone calls, he tells me women always say, gosh, how are you single? And he says he just laughs every single time.
Yeah, and that burns my bridge.
Yeah, it does.
But right. One of the other characteristics you noted about the chameleon is that he's narcissistic.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. See, the chameleon also has insecurities. Like myself, I had insecurities, and we look for the women to to make us feel good about ourselves. We look for the women to build our self-esteem. A lot of times when you see men who are older, no kids, great careers, and they're still single, there's some still narcissistic tendencies there because they're still looking for a relationship.
You are listening to Brave Talk Radio at ToniEmehel.com.